Running is simple, right? Just lace up your shoes and go. But as easy as it seems, there are some classic mistakes that can turn your runs into struggles, struggles into problems, and problems means you're not going to be enjoying your running as much as you deserve. So today we're breaking down the most common running slip-ups, from doing too much too soon to not hydrating and fueling your runs properly. I'm going to be showing you exactly how to avoid them, to run smarter, stay injury-free, and enjoy your running even more. Right, let's get straight into this. Starting out, we're going to be chatting about not fueling and hydrating your runs properly. This will become increasingly important as our runs get longer. For everybody out there training for half marathons and potentially longer than that. For your longer runs, you want to be taking some sort of fuel throughout the run to keep your energy stores topped up and running strong till the end. So if you're going out for 60 minutes or more, then consider taking some gels or an alternative fuel, whatever suits you. You should be taking around about 30 grams worth of carbohydrates, taking this around about every 35 to 45 minutes. And this is really why most people struggle on their long runs, because they don't fuel early enough. They wait till they get tired. You got to top up these stores early and often. Also, make sure you're starting out the run feeling fueled and hydrated beforehand. This of course depends on the time of day. For me, it's always that classic bagel, and then I'm going to be running about an hour after that. Nutrition and hydration is so much about trial and error. What worked for someone might not necessarily work for somebody else. So experiment a lot, try with lots of different things, and then come race day, it'll all click because you know exactly what you should be doing. Next up, I want to have a quick chat about running with poor form. Few of us were ever really taught how to run, and consequently, we pick up a lot of bad habits that are hard to unteach. But there are a few basic things we can do to concentrate on improving our form, getting ourselves covering the ground in a more efficient way. Starting out, make sure we're not overstriding. This is when you land with your foot out in front of you, and this is going to create a braking force and put a lot of strain on your joints as well. We want to be focused, having that foot landing nicely underneath our center of mass, underneath our body, which is when we're going to be able to absorb that impact nicely and then spring off with the next stride. With our posture, we want to make sure we have a slight forward lean from the ankles, not from the waist. This will really help you to get that correct foot placement that we've just talked about. And then finally, our cadence. This is the number of steps we take per minute as we run. Newer runners typically have quite a low cadence, maybe 150, 160 steps a minute. There are lots of ways we can increase this. That's all for a separate video. We'll link to our cadence video up here and down below. Moving on, I want to have a quick chat about strength training. Yes, it's a bit boring, but it's so important, especially for older runners. Getting that right balance can be quite hard. Getting worried you don't want to overdo your strength training because that might impact your running. You're going to be getting even more achy muscles. In those early days of strength training, your body's not going to be used to it, so you may get some achy muscles. You may have to dial down your running a little bit as your body adapts and becomes stronger, and then we can start to build the running back in. I'd really recommend in those early days, just one strength session a week will have a really positive impact on your running. It doesn't have to be long or super intense. You can simply do this at home with just some basic exercises like some squats, some bridges, some planks, some lunges, and some calf raises. You can even do a lot of these on the run as well. Just stop for 10 or 15 minutes and do these when you're out on the run. I like to do these always on my easy run day. So I do an easy run in the morning and then my strength training in the afternoon, as I believe it's really important to keep those rest days as full rest days. Next up, don't do too much too soon. Now, you might be new to running or coming back after an injury. Sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what you're capable of, and it's easy to get carried away with maybe running too far, too fast, or too frequently as well, or potentially a combination of all three. Injuries can start cropping up, which forces us to have time off. No one wants to be doing that when the golden rule of running is trying to achieve that consistency, and that's what's going to make us a better, faster, stronger, happier runner overall. Now, you may have heard of the 10% rule, which basically says don't increase your weekly volume by more than 10% per week. And while this can work for a lot of runners in that middle band, for more experienced runners, they're going to ramp up far too quickly. And for some newer beginner runners, it's not going to be challenging enough. So it's all about using that 10% rule as a rough guide and just adapting it for where you are in your training. And of course, it doesn't take into account intensity that we're building into our weeks as well. So I'd really recommend, as you're starting to build things up in your training, just change one thing at a time. Time, frequency or intensity. Don't go adding loads more time to your runs, doing more runs, and doing them faster as well. That's going to lead to some injury. Just change one thing maybe per week and build it up gradually like that. I'd really recommend take recovery weeks as well to let our body adapt. Now, it doesn't mean, of course, we can't go for a run. This is going to be a week every 3 to 4 weeks. So there's going to be less volume during this week, and there's going to be less intensity during the week as well, allowing our body time to recover. I'd really recommend always following a structured training plan, which we have on the website, linked down below at benparks.com. All our beginner plans are completely free to download, so go and check those out. And there's links to marathon training plans, half marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks, ultra plans, all on there with thousands of 5-star reviews from loads of runners all around the world that have been using our plans for years and achieved some great results. And then finally in this section, simply listening to your body. Your body is the best indicator for how well you are adapting to your training. If you are feeling more tired than normal, then rest up. If you've got particularly achy muscles, then rest up. If your mojo is just a little bit low, lacking in some motivation, then rest up. Which leads us really nicely onto the next common mistake, which is ignoring pain when our body is telling us that something isn't quite right. We're so often taught to push through pain, no gain mentality, and it's most likely going to lead to an injury and some time off from running. If you are getting some pains, be flexible with your training. Consider your training plan as a rough guide, but don't worry if you have to miss a few runs here and there, just to allow your body to fix that pain that it's experiencing. Flexibility is so important over the long term as we're trying to achieve that consistency. Definitely seek some professional advice if you can afford to. Of course, that's not going to be available for everybody, but getting some professional advice from a physio or even a sports massage therapist, and then you will know exactly what to do to fix that pain and get it out of your life and get back running stronger. So many running injuries can be fixed by simply resting, icing, heat treatment, stretching, massaging, and doing strength work as well. So a lot of the time, it's not something to be particularly worried about or scared of, but get that professional advice if you can afford to. If you can't, then I always recommend checking out people like Bob and Brad here on YouTube. They've got an excellent channel, but you've just got to make sure you're 100% sure with that self-diagnosis and just build that into your strength routine to get that injury gone. Next up is an all-time classic. Everybody does this, I think, when they start running, myself included, running too fast. People head out the door and absolutely tear it down the road, running far too fast, and before they know it, they've got their hands on knees, thinking this running lark is really quite difficult. It puts so much extra stress on our body training this way, and it's really not the best way of running fast in the long term with our running either. What I always like to do with my running is around about 80% of my training a week will be at a low heart rate, a conversational pace, zone 2 heart rate, zone 2 training, however you want to phrase it, the kind of training at that intensity as you're running along, you could have a chat with a friend as you go. And then the 20% of the week, we're talking about some more structured training, some intervals, some faster pace running, some thresholds, things like that. And again, a lot of people can be guilty of running these too fast as well, going out to smash their K reps as fast as they can. This again can lead to overtraining as well. So if you're really unsure about how fast you should be running, download one of our completely free pacing guides, and it will just give you an idea of how fast to run your easy runs at, how fast to run your intervals at, and it's going to be a really good guide that you can take in at your training. So why this is so important, it's going to allow us to build up our mileage safely, build that endurance, build our cardiovascular system without overly straining our body. Right, put your hands up if you're guilty of not warming up before your runs. I am definitely guilty of this. When I was running in my 20s, I was, and then once you get into your 30s and now into my 40s, you just can't get away with it. Warming up properly and getting the body ready for running, especially in the colder months as we're experiencing now. Again, it will really help reduce that risk of picking up injuries. You're most likely to injure yourself by pulling a muscle or straining a muscle in those first few minutes of a run. I know a lot of us are particularly time poor these days, but it really does take just 5 minutes of doing some dynamic stretches. So things like leg swings, opening and closing the gate, some hamstring stretches are really going to help you ease into the run. We'll link to our complete follow along warm-up video up here and down below. And then finally, I just say ease into your run as well. It's a very slow jog for that first K. On my run today, my first opening K was just over 5 minutes, but my overall average for the run was 4 minutes 26 a K. Just treat that opening K as very gentle, very relaxed as you get going, and then you can speed up and warm up to the average pace that you want to do for the whole run. Another one I've been guilty of a lot of these today, is basically not resting enough. Rest days really are part of our overall training. This is when we're going to be making those all-important adaptations and our muscles can rebuild after the tough training sessions we've been putting them through. In my own training, I always treat rest days as full rest days. No cross training, no strength training, definitely no running. How many rest days is going to depend on the individual. For me, it's always once per week now. It used to be once every about 12 or 13 days. But as we get a little bit older, we need a little bit more rest in our routine. When to put these in during the week point, it's usually a good idea after a hard session, after a long run. And then also when you are having that little bit of chill time, relaxing and resting, you can be doing that in your rest day sweater or rest day tee, which you can pick up from my website, benparks.com. We ship all around the world, and feel free to use code YouTube10 for 10% off your order. Next up, we just want to touch on over-analyzing everything we're doing, getting bogged down in all that data we're collecting on our devices. There's so many different running gadgets these days, analyzing everything we're doing, heart rate monitors, lactate monitors, foot pods. There's so much data that can be analyzed, and of course it can be incredibly useful in improving our running, but equally it can be damaging and demoralizing at certain times as well. Remember, with our running, progress is not linear and it does take time as well. You'll always have good days and bad days as part of your training, and these can't always necessarily be explained. We're complex human beings. There are so many other factors that can affect our running: nutrition, life stresses, our mood. I always say it's completely fine to turn these features off. Use them when you feel comfortable using them. If your Garmin is telling you you're unproductive just a few days before your goal race, maybe your heart rate's a bit elevated, maybe you're a bit stressed about everything, and then it goes and tells you you're unproductive, it's really not going to put you in a very good headspace, when in fact you could be in the form of your life. You're just a little bit stressed about the travel and everything that's going on out there. Our gadgets are only as good as the data that we're feeding into them, and we don't always know it's that accurate either. So it's all about knowing the relationship you have with these gadgets and devices. They're not always correct, they're not always right, they can be, but just take everything with a bit of a pinch of salt and see how do you feel inside, and that is the most important thing. Right, our last one now is especially important in 2024, is simply comparing yourself to others or other people on social media. Of course, it's really good to follow people for inspiration and ideas potentially for your own training, but try not to compare your training to theirs, how fast they're going, where they're running, who they're running with. Remember, everyone's on their own journey. Everyone's got different life stresses in their life, different experience levels. You really will never see that full picture on social media. Apps like Strava can be really great for tracking your own progress, but it's really important to keep that ego in check. Stop trying to impress your mates. Keep your easy runs nice and easy. And of course, as with any social media, it's completely fine to take a break. I've had to a few times over the years when my mental health has not been in a good place to be on social media. Contrary to what everybody says, the runs really do still count if they aren't on Strava, or you can just keep them private and go back onto Strava when you feel ready to go out there and share your running journey again. So there's so much to think about here. Have I missed any? What running mistakes have you made over the years, and how have you overcome them? Let me know down in the comments and help out the running community as well. Please check out my website, benparks.com, and feel free to use that code YouTube10 for 10% off anything you fancy there, and it really helps to support the channel and support everything we do. That's it, guys. Lots of love. Keep on working hard. Keep on it done. We'll see you very soon in the next one.